I'm Jordan Dunbar. This is the Mangione trial from the BBC World Service. On December 4th, 2024, father of two and healthcare CEO Brian Thompson was gunned down in broad daylight on the streets of New York. He left behind a grieving family who say they've been shattered by his death.
The search for the person of interest in the killing of United Healthcare CEO enters a second week.
District of Manhattan police are searching for the gunman. They believe the shooting was a targeted killing. Let me show you the live.
Mangione was arrested days later after an extensive manhunt. He instantly became the centre of a media firestorm. Headlines like "America's New Nightmare" and "The Internet's Obsession" appear.
Just a cold-blooded, horrible killing, and how people can like this guy is, that's a sickness, actually. That's really very bad.
While online he's hailed by some as a Robin Hood for the Reddit generation, others have less complicated reasons to support him.
Is there like a Mario to Luigi? Like, do you have a brother that's free, literally?
Yeah, 1 second. Luigi? Oh my god, you've created quite the stir online. Yeah, you have. Everybody's looking for you. Yeah, including me. Wow, you are gorgeous. Is it true you're 6'2"?
It's kind of exciting me, because, like, does he have a master plan?
His became a face that launched 1,000 conspiracy theories. For some, the case has shone a spotlight on a broken healthcare system that has failed millions of Americans. For others, it's revealed a growing threat of so-called far-left violence from middle-class America.
But it does seem that he has some ill will toward corporate America.
In this series, we follow this extraordinary case, unpack what really happened that day, and ask what it tells us about our changing relationship to big business, inequality, social media, beauty, and even attitudes to murder. It's about what's happening inside and outside the courtroom. With me to give us legal analysis is Terry Austin, coming from New York City. Terry's a former trial attorney for NYC Law Department, has followed high-profile trials from A$AP Rocky to Donald Trump. Terry, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, so great to be here.
And to deep dive into the reaction online and offline is Joel Finkelstein from the National Contagion Research Institute. Joel looks at how ideas and trends form and spread online and what it means for society. Joel, how are you?
Great, thanks for having us here, Jordan.
Thank you both for being here. But first, how did we get here? What do we know so far? Using police reports, court documents and CCTV, we've put together a short timeline of the events leading up to the murder and the manhunt that followed. We start in San Francisco on the west coast of the US. Monday, November 18th, 2024. Mrs. Mangione heads to the police station to file a missing persons report on her son, Luigi. According to it, she hadn't heard from him since July, which is 6 months before. 6 days later, on November 24th, according to police, Luigi Mangione gets off a coach in New York around 10 p.m. and he heads to the Hilton Midtown Hotel. Now, this is where the murder would later take place. He hangs around for about half an hour and then, according to police, a cab takes him to a hostel about 3.5 miles away. The arrest warrant tells us he gives the receptionist a New Jersey driver's license with the name Mark Rosario. Court documents reveal the clerk asked Luigi to pull his mask down so he can see his face. He smiles at the clerk in what would become one of his most famous pictures. The next big event we have is 10 days later. It's December 4th, the day of the killing. According to police, Mangione leaves the hostel by bike at 5:34 a.m. 6:44 a.m. Brian Thompson has spent the night at the hotel across the road from the Hilton. There's an investors conference taking place for his company, United Healthcare, there. New York City police describe Mangione as lying in wait for the CEO. CCTV shows a man walks up behind Thompson and fires 2 shots at his back. He keeps shooting until a semi-automatic pistol jams. He clears the jam and keeps firing. Then he flees on an electric bike into Central Park. 7 a.m, Mangione is now on foot and heading northbound before he hails a cab. And a video shows him walking into the Port Authority bus station, which is where interstate buses enter New York. But police say there's no footage of him exiting. So now the manhunt begins.
Also on tonight's programme, a chilling shooting on the streets of New York. A US health executive is killed by a masked gunman. A manhunt is underway now for Brian Thompson's killer.
The CEO of United Healthcare was shot and killed in what appears, at this early stage of our investigation, to be a brazen, targeted attack.
Pennsylvania State Police put Mangione 200 miles east of the murder scene for several days. He moves between the cities of Pittsburgh and Philadelphia. Meanwhile, back in New York, the police begin searching Central Park for the attacker using drones, dogs and divers. They discover a backpack they think might belong to the suspect. As they unzip it, they realise it's full of Monopoly money, which creates frenzied online debate about the killer's motivations. Remember, at this point, Luigi Mangione's name is not known to the police, according to the New York Police Commissioner. But then, on December 9th, so 5 days after the shooting, there's a chance breakthrough. It was just a regular day at a McDonald's in the small city of Altoona, east of Pittsburgh, until at 9:14 a.m, footage shows a man ordering hash browns and he goes to sit at the back of the restaurant. One of the staff thinks this man looks a lot like the suspected New York shooter. They ring the police and report it.
In the US, a man is arrested in connection with the shooting of a health insurance boss in New York.
The huge manhunt and police appeal has led here to a roadside McDonald's in Pennsylvania.
9:58 a.m, officers arrest Mangione. He shows them the forged New Jersey driver's license in the name of Mark Rosario. Pennsylvania police search his bag and say that in his possession he has a 9mm pistol matching the murder weapon and a handwritten document. In it, he allegedly wrote, "These parasites had it coming." Luigi Mangione, 26 years old, is arrested and taken into custody. He has 3 sets of charges against him from the state of New York, the federal government, and the state of Pennsylvania. Now, guys, I need to turn to you, our experts, to find out what's happened since then and what this tells us. Terry Austin is a legal analyst and formerly a trial attorney at the NYC Law Department. Joel Finkelstein is our expert looking at extremism and how things go from online to offline with the NCRI. Terry, we need to get into the charges and how the trials, plural, might play out. Along with Joel, we need to talk about Brian Thompson because he, after all, is the victim in all this. I also want to talk about why this trial is different, and it's not just the unbelievable online reaction or the conspiracy theories, the idea of pretty privilege, but the real-world consequences of the case. Terry, briefly, what has Luigi Mangione actually been charged with?
Mangione actually faces some very serious charges, a total of 20 charges. First of all, in Pennsylvania, he has 5 charges alleged. The first has to do with his firearm that he was carrying, forgery, false ID, he had a suppressor, and the 5th is this hostile manifesto that he had against the healthcare industry. Those are the lesser charges. The real serious charges come in New York, both in New York State Court and also in New York Federal Court. In New York State Court, he is facing 1st and 2nd degree murder, actually a total of 11 charges, also dealing with the weapon and the forged instrument. And in federal court, most of those charges, there are 4 of those charges. They deal with stalking. There are 2 stalking charges, murder, and firearms. All of these are very serious. The most serious, of course, is the federal court in New York, where he could face the death penalty.
There's a lot of evidence against Luigi Mangione, but he has pled not guilty. Is that normal in cases like this?
You know, most people who have a lot of evidence against them will plead guilty, but those are really lesser charges and charges where you don't have this sort of serious consequence. There might be some defenses, even if there is a lot of evidence. There might be a defense, say, for instance, of insanity. There could be a defense of mistaken identity. So he has the right to plead not guilty, and his defense counsel is going to make every argument possible to either have him acquitted or to have a lesser charge imposed against him.
Well, Terry, the American legal system is famously complicated. I got to ask, why 3 cases? Why not just 1? Wouldn't that be simpler? Why have we got 3?
It would be much simpler. You could have all of the evidence in one case. You could have one decision made, one sentencing. But each jurisdiction has a right to bring charges when they are alleging crimes against individuals. So it's a jurisdictional question. The reason that the federal court in New York has jurisdiction here is because he traveled interstate. He came originally from Atlanta. He was in New York, then he was in Pennsylvania. So they have the right to bring the charges, those 4 charges they have against him. And then, of course, New York State is really the primary. And I think that's why we see New York State going first. Those murder charges, the first-degree and second-degree murder charges, are very serious. It happened in New York State. And again, you know, it's 2 degrees of murder. Most murder charges in New York State only are second degree. You only get to that first degree murder when it includes police officers, when it includes torture, if it includes multiple victims, and when it includes something in furtherance of terrorism. And that's what they did here in New York State. They added that extra terror charge, and that's how they got that first-degree murder charge. And with first-degree murder here in New York, he could possibly get life without the possibility of parole.
I mean, that shows how seriously they're taking it. Is it unusual to have 3 trials running like this?
Yes, it is unusual to have 3 trials. We have seen it before. We saw it with R. Kelly. We've seen it with other defendants when there are different states, whether that's California, New York, Florida. They each have the right to have a charge against that defendant. We saw it with Harvey Weinstein. Now, most of those jurisdictions will talk to each other and determine which one should go first. But then, once that case is over, even if the defendant is in for life, they still have the possibility of going to face charges in those other jurisdictions.
One person I'm surprised I haven't heard that much about in all of this is the victim, Brian Thompson. Other than that, he was a CEO of a healthcare company. Joel, what do we know about Brian Thompson? What do we know about his background?
Brian Thompson is being portrayed as a wealthy, greedy CEO who is harming people, and it comes from a privileged background. And is somebody who has enjoyed all of life's riches undeservedly by being a parasite. Who in that frame, his murder is justified. Brian Thompson is somebody who came from virtually nothing. His father was a farmhand who worked in a granary much of his life, and his mother, I've been given to understand, is an esthetician. Someone who's a nail technician. So this is somebody from a small town in Iowa, a valedictorian in their high school, who came from absolutely nothing. And in some sense, it's a very American story. So really, the optics behind who Brian Thompson is are very different than how he's being portrayed in this meme of being, somebody who has always enjoyed a privileged life.
And I'm wondering why that's got lost online, because normally when you have a victim like this, there's a massive outpouring of sympathy, right? There's been a murder, but that is not what happened in the online reaction.
Unlike anything we had seen, and NCRI has been studying extremism on social media for the better part of 6 years and has issued reports on some of the most high-profile outgrowths of extremism from the social cyber domain. This was something, the kinds of behaviors that we saw, endorsing and justifying the use of political assassinations and violence, were astronomical. And they weren't just on extremist channels where you normally find people that celebrate this kind of wanton violence. On places like TikTok or Instagram, we saw 300 or 400% increases in hashtags like Eat the Rich in reaction to this murder. On Twitter, Luigi Mangione's followers grew by almost to 400,000 people within just a few days. You had groups commodifying his content, creating meme coins, merchandise, AI-generated videos, objectifying him sexually. I mean, the activity and the support for the murder appeared to be extraordinarily widespread.
To me, it sounds like Luigi Mangione has become a meme, but also Brian Thompson has, as the face of like rampant capitalism and the human and the father of 2 and the small town boy. That's gotten lost in all of this.
So that's right. The fact that this is somebody who has a family, who has 2 young children, and a wife, who are now completely devastated, that came from rags to riches story has been completely lost in the narrative because the meme requires that this person be somebody who is a goblin, is somebody who cannot be sympathized with.
And that's what's also abnormal, is that we've forgotten about the victim, but everything has become about the alleged killer, Luigi Mangione. Terry, what do we know about his background, where he came from?
Well, Luigi Mangione really came from a very prominent real estate family in Baltimore. He is of Italian descent, and his father before him, they're all in real estate, quite wealthy. We see Mangione going on to graduate school at the University of Pennsylvania, which is an elite school here in the United States. And he received his bachelor's degree there. He received his master's degree there. And the only hint of something to come is the fact that his mother did file a missing persons report, and he did go off the grid a bit when he went to Hawaii. He was with this community of surfers in Hawaii, so he lost contact with his high school and his family, and we don't know what actually occurred there. Perhaps some of that will come out at trial.
Now, Joel, if I look online, who is Luigi Mangione online? Terry gives a breakdown of his actual background, but what am I seeing when I look online for what people think he is?
So the difference here is that this is the mainstream. I mean, we see this, the groups celebrating this are, of course, the kind of more extreme places you'd expect, like the 4chans of the world, which for your viewers who don't know, these are very extreme communities loaded with the glorification of violence and the celebration of shootings and killers and anti-government sentiment. So those folks are definitely present, and use of those platforms predicts in our research support for Luigi Mangione. But places like Blue Sky, these are mainstream, like left-leaning platforms that have 30 million users, and they're putting out pictures of Luigi where he looks like a saint. Literally, they're sanctifying him. They're creating it, and this is something we only see in these more extreme communities. This is everywhere. We've never seen the mainstreaming of this kind of worship of political violence the way that we're seeing it in the case of Mangione.
And Terry, that support, you've also seen that on the streets in real life, in terms of the trial, right? People outside courtrooms with placards. Tell me about that.
That's right. When he had his arraignment in New York State Court, that was in December on the 23rd, there was a huge crowd there, and they had signs, and the signs were saying that he was a hero, a folk hero, and to free Mangione, to deny, defend, depose. Those were the three names that were on the bullets and the casings. There were a few people who were there talking about the fact that, Brian Thompson deserves justice. But I would say the majority of the people out there were talking about Mangione as though he were a hero. I've never seen anything like that before. And they were very loud. You could hear actually in the courtroom the chants that were occurring outside of the courtrooms.
Joel, can we break down who the supporters are? Are there common denominators?
Our survey work shows that 44% of people in the United States think that this murder was at least somewhat justified. And what's terrifying about this is that the kind of people that support Mangione, they tend to spend a lot of time online. Okay, so that you see that the supporters are an online-oriented bunch. They're getting this. The meme is contagious, and it's being transferred through popular support on social media. So the followers here are come from all kinds of political backgrounds, but they're a social media group. They're a young group, and there's something about their dystopian anger that Luigi has very successfully captured. Okay, so this kind of disgruntled helplessness, this felt sense that, like, as a millennial or as a young person, I have no future, right? That we're not going to sort things out. That sense that there's nothing we can do about any of this really appears to be not just part of the motivation that Luigi had, but part of the fascination his followers do.
The other thing that's really interesting about it is you've got really serious issues here: inequality, healthcare, capitalism, whether it's failing young people. But then on the other hand, you have something that's converged, which is this idea of pretty privilege. He's a good-looking guy, and it appears the fact that he's good-looking has amplified even further his support and the fact that we're here talking about him. There was the hot assassin trend, Joel. I mean, how much of this can be attributed to that online?
This trend was on TikTok. It was all over Instagram. You had women taking off their bras, fan cams of people putting out art and sort of like turning him into a sex symbol. And he is a very handsome person. He really does. He is obviously a striking person. And what that does is it shuts off our capacity for thinking. And it provides anxious people who are aggrieved with immediate closure. Immediately, they have a very crystal clear narrative about a just young hero who is now advocating finally for them.
Terry, you can have all the high-powered attorneys and experts you want, but the other thing people are talking about is image in the legal system matters, doesn't it? When you step into that courtroom, it matters what you look like.
Absolutely. And Joel hit it on the head. This attractive individual is going to have some type of advantage even in the courtroom. He is quite striking, and some of those jurors might think that, because he is handsome, because he is educated, that he could not possibly do any wrong. The judge is not going to be that way. The judge is going to make sure that the jury is given the law, make sure that that courtroom treats Mangione the same way that any other defendant would be treated. You're going to see, I believe, him dressing as a college prep person. We saw when he was arraigned, he absolutely was dressed like that. He had a maroon sweater. And I think he will be presented so that he looks good in front of that jury. Are you looking at the jury? Are you shaking your head? Do you look angry? Do you look like you could be a cold-blooded murderer? And the jury's going to be watching his every move.
And that's why we're going to do an episode all about image and this idea of pretty privilege, of the different privileges that beauty actually gives you. I do think, though, it can be reversed, Terry, right? Because people have been saying the other side of the image problem is that you can make someone seem dangerous. A lot of people online were saying the fact that Mangione was marched by like 30 law enforcement people in an orange jumpsuit like a Marvel villain, that was also all about image too.
It was about image, and you can better believe you see his defense attorney, Karen Agnifilo, saying, look, this is too much. There was no reason that Eric Adams, the mayor of New York, had to come and escort her client into New York. There was no reason to have these huge rifles and guns. She said she'd never seen that before. It was overkill. And I do think that because he has become this online figure, you see law enforcement reacting accordingly. And she's saying basically on behalf of her client, it's not fair. He's not going to get a fair trial. And he has to get a fair trial. Every person accused of a crime, of an alleged crime, is supposed to, under the Constitution, have a right to a trial, a right to a fair jury of his peers. And she's claiming that because of all of this hoopla, he's not going to get a fair trial.
Joel, what are the people who think he's innocent or they support what they've done, what are they trying to do around the trial?
Look, I mean, part of what we need to wrap our heads around, and I think Terry did a good job describing this, that these are not fans, right? This is a system. These are participants. Many of them were calling McDonald's after his arrest, and they were prank calling it, bombarding that McDonald's with highly unprized attention and dangerous threats. They did the same to law enforcement. Law enforcement in Pennsylvania and New York received numerous calls from these so-called fans. These are not bystanders by any sense of the term. Because of the strength of the narrative and the meme, these groups have literally funded Mangione's defense. Mangione, earlier on in February, put together a legal defense fund through Give, Send, Go. Their goal was to raise $200,000. They've already raised $330,000.
Wow. And then on top of that, Terry, they have to find juries who are normal people to put up with this pressure, that's going to be really difficult, right?
It's going to be very difficult. When they do the voir dire, which is the questioning of the jury, they bring in a pool of jurors, and those jurors will be from this jurisdiction, this venue. And you are supposed to have people who haven't heard about the case. And if they have, they try to say, are you going to be fair? Everyone is going to have heard about this case. So they're going to have to start off there and question these jurors and say, listen, what are your feelings about this? How do you feel about the healthcare industry? Have you ever had anyone in your family who was affected or denied a claim? And it's going to be so hard for that team to get a group of jurors who haven't been affected by the healthcare system one way or another. Ultimately, they will pick a jury who says they're going to be fair. There's no question you could get a stealth juror on either side who determines, I don't care what the evidence shows. I don't care what the law is. I am going to vote not guilty. I am going to acquit him. That's called jury nullification. So I think jury selection, oftentimes they say when you do a trial, the most important part is picking the jury. I think it's critical.
Joel, I mean, this is so difficult because Luigi Mangione, he deserves a fair trial. He's pled not guilty. He deserves to have, all of the fairness of the legal system. But it's coming from both sides, this jury nullification, because you could have people who are set out saying, oh, absolutely, he's guilty. You have people that want to get him off. And online, we've seen that, haven't we, that this nullification is a trend.
Well, so that's exactly right. And the same groups that have funded his defense made sure that they softened the earth before the trial even took place. And for the first time that I can recall, the term jury nullification became a trend on Twitter. Okay, so you have people openly expressing in hopes that other jurors will come across this idea that, juries can be nullified. It isn't done often, but this is how it works. Here's the instructions for how to nullify a jury.
There's so much writing on this trial, which is why we've run out of time, but there's so much to talk about, which is why we're going to do multi-episodes on everything and deep dive into it. Terry, briefly, what happens next?
So we're going to see in the next phase, we're going to have appearances by Mangione. In the state case, he's already, as I said, been indicted. He's already been arraigned. He's already pled not guilty. There is a hearing coming up on February 21st. And during that hearing, I do believe we're going to get a trial date, or at least they're going to talk about a trial date. In federal court, we're going to see the charges probably officially being brought against him. This is sort of the indictment part where it's been adjourned from the 18th to February 17th, and we're going to see, there's going to be a hearing, and we're going to see more specifically what those charges are against him. They'll be brought up to him, and he may have an opportunity to respond at that point.
And we, of course, will be following all the way. Joel Finkelstein, Terry Austin, thank you so much for your time. There's so much to unpack here. I'm Jordan Dunbar. This is the Mangione trial from the BBC World Service. We're going to have a new episode every time there's a development in the case, as well as taking a deep dive into things like the manhunt, the legal case, conspiracy theories, and more. So please subscribe to the World Service YouTube channel so you never miss a thing.